Looking at experiments like the toddlers that you saw earlier and thousands of others, we were actually able to draw a very simple conclusion. Why we work determines how well we work. A person's why is the driver of their adaptive performance. Now, I'm not going to ask you to take my word for it. We're going to prove this to you. But before we prove it to you, I've got to give you a language and a framework to understand the reasons why people do just about anything. This framework we call the motive spectrum. In this framework, it first starts with the realization that a person's motive, the reason for doing something, can come from one of three places. There's the work itself, there's their own identity, their values, their beliefs, and then there are external forces, like your mother-in-law. Lindsay's my wife, so this is our inside joke. When you look at the motives that can be combined with these three ingredients, the first motive you get is what we call the play motive. The play motive, the motive itself is symbolized by this circle. For the play motive, the motive is the work itself. The work is its own reward. Think of a hobby that you do. Hobby like woodworking or photography or a sport. Nobody pays you to do it. You're not doing it for any particular reason. You just enjoy doing it. Think about why kids play. That notion of self-directed learning, curiosity, experimentation, exploration. That's the play motive. One step removed from play is what we call the purpose motive. Purpose motive, now this circle is a little further to the right because unlike play, which is the work itself, purpose is when you identify with or believe in the outcome of the work. Play is the work itself. Purpose is the outcome of the work that you actually identify with. The next one is what we call potential. Circle's a little further over to the right. Because with potential, you found that the work enhances your potential. So a second or third order outcome of the work actually benefits your own identity, your values, your beliefs. That's why the circle's a little further to the right. So a teacher at play enjoys creating lesson plans, tending to the classroom, engaging with students. Teacher with purpose does it because he feels like he believes in educating children. Teacher with potential might say, I want to be a school administrator one day, and this is a stepping stone to getting there. These three motives are all connected to the work itself, so we call them the direct motives. They're directly connected to the work itself. The next we call emotional pressure. Circle is now disconnected from the work itself, so think about guilt. Show of hands here. Anyone ever use guilt to get a loved one to do something? Show of hands, guilt. We've all done it. We've all done it. If you think about that, let's say I guilt Lindsay into taking out the trash. She might take out the trash, but she's not doing it for play, purpose, or potential having to do with that activity. She's doing it to alleviate the guilt. The motive is now separate from the activity itself. Peer pressure, FOMO, sense of disappointment, these are all versions of emotional pressure. The next is what we call economic pressure. It's when you're doing something to gain a reward or avoid a punishment that's now separate from the work itself. And then lastly, you get inertia. This is my favorite one. It's when you ask somebody, why are you doing what you're doing? And they say, I don't know. I'm doing it because I did it yesterday, because I did it the day before, because I did it the day before that. I'm doing it because I'm doing it. You'd be amazed by how much inertia there actually is in the workplace. These three we call the indirect motives. When we've studied performance through this lens, we've been able to conclude two things. The first is the direct motives increase adaptive performance, and the indirect ones destroy it. The second thing we were able to conclude is the closer the motive is to the work itself, the more powerful. Play is the most powerful, then purpose, then potential. Inertia the most destructive, then economic pressure, then emotional pressure. Those two findings are so consistent, we can boil it into a single concept called TOMO. TOMO, short for total motivation, occurs when your culture maximizes play, purpose, potential, and minimizes emotional pressure, economic pressure, and inertia. A low TOMO culture does the opposite. It makes people's motives emotional pressure, economic pressure, and inertia, and actually reduces play, purpose, and potential.
So we're going to take a look at these motives in action. So I don't know about you guys, but I've always loved doing math problems. I was the nerd in elementary school who would stay and play with the bricks and the math tables during recess instead of go out and play sports.
I think these guys were too.
So I'm going to ask you guys to do a little math problem in your seats. I'm not going to call on you. It's just for yourself. I'm going to show up a grid of numbers, and there's going to be two numbers that add up to 10. And I want you to find those two numbers. So here we go. The two numbers that add up to 10.